Hi, this is Cora Stack here again, Dr. Stack. I just wanted to talk again about a few things. First of all, I seem to be meeting more and more people who are expressing extreme concern about the level of corruption, inverted commas, in Ireland, and really articulating and asking me to do something about it. I mean, what can I do about it? I'm only just a researcher and an academic. I mean, there's very little I can do about it, but I can articulate what they're saying on the ground. What the average Joe person is very disillusioned with how the country is being run, and they feel that, the powers that be are completely disconnected from the reality of a huge number of people in the so-called squeeze middle, or ordinary people, as I say it, and who are really struggling. Everybody's struggling with paying the bills, the extortionate electricity bills, insurance, all of that, and they're all in the private sector. A lot of those are now, and a lot of them are farmed out or outsourced over many years. And it was said that we'd have a better system, but it isn't really delivering. And then there are a lot of people complaining about oversight bodies, that they're siding with the institution, and they're being funded by a huge amount of these commercial legal firms behind the scenes. And if you complain, you're facing a brick wall of the institution defending itself, and these institutions are spending so much money on defending themselves that they're not reforming the system about which people feel is not working for them as taxpayers. These are institutions that are paid, public bodies, for example, like TUSLA and part of the places, hospitals, so on, like that. So there's a pile of things in particular, So I want to talk about this. Is very important now, and it's a really important issue that I've kind of cracked, if you like. So it's only one of many things I study. I'm studying a lot of things, so it's just this is what I'm doing at the moment. So it's acts of omission and the Protective Disclosures Act, why this affects everybody. So after the budget, the majority of ordinary working people are saying we're going to be €500 less, and we haven't money to pay our electricity bills, the essentials. I mean, this is covered in the media about the working poor, who were able to afford, the professionals, teachers, Gardaí, nurses, lecturers, that level of people, even in the private sector, that level, were had access to affordable accommodation and housing, and were respected in the community. And over the years, as I've done a time series analysis, their purchasing power has been eroded, hugely relative to inflation, particularly housing inflation and cost of living inflation. So housing inflation has not been factored into. Well, of course, it's all about supply and demand, but as the central bank had pointed out recently, a lot of it too is because of all of these objections. So we have to be very careful about objection, but it's also building up and objecting to a large. With the standards we now have, we should be able to build up in towns and cities. I mean, that's one way, and building, as I say, different sizes of apartments to suit. So I have a policy paper on that, and I think it's very sensible, and it'll be worth looking at for housing policy if anyone's interested, to try and solve our housing policy problem. It's a huge problem. So, but this is what I'm talking about now. Acts of omission and the Protective Disclosures Act, why this affects everyone. So this is something that has taken me a long time to spot. So my name is Dr. Cora M. Stack. Today I want to talk about a serious but often overlooked issue in Ireland's Protective Disclosures Amendment Act 2022, something that has major consequences for both employees and in particular employers across the public and private sectors within the meaning of the Act. So this is the key point that has been missed here that I'm one-sided. I couldn't be fairer, to be honest. And I tried to get it fixed. I tried to point out the problem to the government, and this solution has made it worse for all sides, unfortunately. That's the sad thing about it, and it has omitted the courts from oversight, which is a desperate thing to do to the court system, which is a huge arm of our legal system in a Commonwealth system. So it's about acts of omission, the failure to act when there is a legal or ethical duty to do so. Now, that's just a very broad definition, So under the current law, but that's kind of simplifying it. But I think it's under the current law, these omissions, for example, this is an example, when an organisation ignores a complaint or fails to investigate wrongdoing or, gaslights it. Gaslights says, gaslights is a good word to use about complaints, any kind of an excuse. And solicitors can be very good at doing this behind the scenes. They make up some kind of a story. Well, there's nothing wrong, we did nothing wrong. Or it can be anything, a public body, we're right, we did nothing wrong, even though they know they did something wrong. They say we did nothing wrong, and they're the final word. There's nothing to say. They say we do everything by the book, and we're perfect. We're doing nothing wrong, and we'll not accept any criticism. This sort of thing. So you can't come back at them, unless you go take them to court. And are you going to do that? Who's going to do that without a whole? They have the legal team of solicitors probably tell them to write this, and you're left. The average man in the streets is left with nothing to defend themselves, knowing damn well they did things wrong. So this happens all the time. So or simply does nothing when it should. You see, that's the other side. But that's are not clearly recognised as relevant wrongdoing. This means they often can't be reported or properly investigated under the Act. I have to have a look at the Act again, because I want to have a look at it again, just to be able to assure that this is correct. So the gap, I think, investigated by the courts is the proper word here. Investigated by the courts, because I think the courts under the Act, I should have that in there. This gap doesn't hurt whistleblowers. It also hurts employers and public bodies and any governance of public bodies. So it hurts the governments. So that's the point here. So and it leaves them exposed to long-term liability when problems are ignored instead of being resolved early. This is why I'm saying we should have an arbitration framework, in all cases, so that we don't have this mess. So, it makes absolute sense when I look at even the problems here to have an arbitration framework or an arbitration first framework as part of our legal system, which is so the Protective Disclosures Amendment Act 2022 created the Office of the Protective Disclosures Commissioner, but this body can only receive and refer reports. I mean, it has very limited powers. I mean, it's incredible. When you hear Disclosures Commissioner, you think, big job and all of that. It cannot compel anyone to act. And the courts, the only bodies with true power to enforce accountability, this is the clear gap here, have effectively been removed from the process. So this is where I have a major issue, that the courts, the only bodies with true power, they're not quasi-legal, to enforce accountability, have been effectively removed from the process. This is why this issue is so important. It's not about taking sides, it's about protecting everyone, ensuring that when something goes wrong, there is a fair, transparent and independent way to deal with it. So you say, are you the barrister for the courts in Ireland, in the judicial system? Did they hire you? They certainly did not. I can guarantee you of that. I'm completely independent. So reform is urgently needed to, first of all, recognise failure to act as wrongdoing within the meaning of the Act. Restore judicial oversight. Now, it's not just about the current judiciary, it's the office of the judiciary. So when I'm talking about restoring judicial oversight, I'm talking about the office of the judiciary oversight, so that the courts can step in when institutions fail. This is absolutely critical in order for this law to work properly. Strengthen the powers of the Commissioner so reports lead to real action, not bureaucracy, so that he has some powers to checks and balances, and he has powers to follow up on disclosures so that they're not kind of buried by the person that it's forwarded to. This is not just a whistleblower issue, it's about trust, accountability and fairness for all sides, employees, employers and the public. I mean, could I not have been fair in my research to Minister McGrath? Really couldn't. So if anybody out there on governance of governing authorities or in governance, any kind of governance, county councils or anything like that, I was the one that was trying to help sort this mess out, and this is what happened to that mess. So who was the really person that was trying to help? So who's the one that really let down these people? Was it me who tried to help them, or was it the other person who set up this perilous commissioner, and who advised him? What kind of a legal firm advised him to do this? But at the end of the day, he took their advice. That's the point. And they have all kinds of ways of hiding behind all kinds of secrecy rules about who they are. these solicitors or, these commercial legal firms that advise people like this, that this is the way to solve this. This is not the way to solve it. Absolutely not. If we want a culture of integrity in Ireland, we need a system that doesn't just protect those who speak up, but this is the point, but also helps those who are responsible, supports them, responsible to act. That's what I was trying to say. So I hope that makes sense, because it's very, very complex, and I'm trying to simplify it in a way that I can understand it better, so that I can communicate it better, because that's what the lecture does. You can't really, a lecturer can't, in any area, can't explain something, but sometimes if you do it a few times, you'll get better at it. You'll get more clarity into your own thinking, and you'll find if you have an audience, they make you think. I think my audience are quite smart. I'd say people following this would be very sharp, I'd say. Yeah. So anyway, that's the story. So it's just I want to wish you all the very best for the weekend, and to try and highlight that I was actually trying to solve this problem for all sides, including the employers. Why would I do it? Why would I do it when maybe some employers have been extremely good to me and some haven't. Some have been fantastic and others haven't. So I've seen both sides of the equation, but I've seen very good employers, and I have seen another side to what can happen in the employment. But I see but this is very important, and I hope I've explained it, because even it was only going around the presidential campaign that this serious flaw. I mean, to cut the courts out. Accountability are the only way to force out of one of the most important acts for democracy. It's treason really to the courts, and I think that like stabbing me in the back was also had to. The only way I was stabbed in the back is that all the courts were stabbed in the back as well. I mean, that's horrific for justice. Really, and for access to justice for all. Not mind a huge insult to the integrity of our judicial system, well, it's an awful sting for to the courts and to myself, what was done here, and to all those affected going forward had I not exposed it. And it's not whistleblowing; it's just research. I'm telling you, this is the story as I understand it at the moment, and if anyone can correct me and say I'm wrong, I'm quite happy to say that I'm not. I mean, you see, people come out and they'll say we did nothing wrong, but without legal teams to say no, sorry, they'll try and defend themselves. Wall of solicitors were behind them saying we did nothing wrong, where they did something wrong, but they can't admit it because this kind of thing. And I think some president of some big fellow in the courts were saying that solicitors have got to start admitting that admitting to errors. They can't do this, you see, and if they're writing letters on behalf of the county council, see, they're not going to know any errors, because the solicitors are going to say you can't admit to any errors, you see. So I believe there's some judge there in the courts that think solicitors need to sort of own up to their mistakes. So would they kindly do this in this case and save us all a bit of trouble, because I'm dying to know who these are. I'm intrigued. We haven't seen them yet. They're kind of hiding, and I'm not surprised by that.